Welcome, everyone, to the Inspiration Science podcast and this new episode with a very special guest today. It's actually one of my previous mentors. His name is Martin Tomchuk, and he helps other people, coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs to build and scale a successful coaching consulting business or anyone who offers a service. He also runs a mastermind that is called Millionaire Coach for private coaches who wants to scale and all things that has to do with marketing, with offers, high ticket sales, and so much more wisdom beyond. So thank you so much for coming. And also I want to give a special thanks before we actually start in, because it's my own testimony that I've learned from Martin as well. Just to give a bit context, I've invested the first time into Martin back in 2021 when I started off my coaching business, where I was not in a good place financially and emotionally, but I was getting really resourceful, scratched what I had together, got support from my family, and went all in. And fast forward actually almost 2 years, we're now sitting on this podcast and I get to share actually my own success that I thank also to Martin, because it would not have been possible hitting my first 10K and then scaling to my first 6 figures. Being in New York, you see the background, it's literally where I was, and London, traveling around the world. So thank you so much, Martin, and for coming on my show today.
Amazing. Thank you. And what an intro, by the way. I wasn't expecting all of that, but I'm very grateful. And for your testimony as well, it's been an honor watching you flourish, especially compared to if we think back to our first phone call. So it's been an honor watching and tuning in, but I appreciate the welcome and very, very happy to be here sharing some thoughts.
Thank you so much. Yes, I would be curious to know, after helping so many coaches and things, like if we rewind a little bit back, how did your, initial entrepreneurial journey start in first place, and why particularly like a mentor?
Good question. And I think for background here, Ozzin kindly sent some questions through of what she was going to cover today, but I prefer to kind of keep it flowing and don't look at the questions. So everything's going to be, I suppose, in the background from hearing it for the first time. So if we look at the entrepreneurial journey, I think that's what you're asking, where it started. I think it's one of those things that always was inside. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners kind of go in this direction where, they say they sold lemonade and things, on a stand in the US, and that was where they started. I think mine was a little bit different in the fact that I always had that vibe of wanting to be more, and probably I call it selling. At school, I was always trying to get my own way and trying to swap things, trying to sell things, all from being a kid. But my home life was very different. So my mum was one of those who thought selling was the worst thing in the world. And so it was kind of like directed out of me for a very long time. So I think if we look back at the entrepreneurial journey, at 18, I became self-employed through a gym, through personal training. And that was my first kind of dive into entrepreneurship and having to, I suppose, fend for myself and be in a position where you've got to market, you've got to sell, you've got to deliver. So that was very much a part of my life from, let's say, 18 onwards. But again, it was kind of short-lived. I think the real entrepreneurship journey probably started about 2015. I think that was the point in which I really committed, as in probably similar to what, not similar in the journey, but similar to what we've talked about for the last few minutes. I think previous to 2015 was very much trying lots of things, like being self-employed. I was in a sales role for 3 years. I was living in a new country. I lived in Australia for 10 years. So those things all happened. But 2015 was the point where I started affiliate marketing. I set up an e-commerce business. I tried to do some sales roles on the outside for other coaches. All these types of things started to happen. And one day came to a stop, and I was sat there on the sofa, and I was like, right, I've got to commit to this. Do I want this, or am I just playing around? And I think that was the point. At 2015, I brought all my skills. So I'd learned to market through affiliate marketing and e-commerce. I'd learned to sell on phones, cold calling, selling high ticket, around $20,000, just not in the place where it was for me. So I'd learned those skills, and I brought that to the marketplace. Does that give a good insight, Ozzin?
Yes, it does. It does. And I think many people, and especially entrepreneurs, I feel like can relate to that. It's like the exploration phase when you're kind of looking for this thing that is meant for you. And, I've done also affiliate marketing, e-commerce trading, like it's all the typical entrepreneurial thing until you found that thing that fulfills you. So that's great. And that led you to the mentor that you are today with the skill stacking as well. And, when it comes to that spot where you've been on, you've probably didn't live the dream life that you've wanted when you started out yet back then, versus now you're traveling with Sally all around the world and you're doing business. Yeah. So I would be curious, how did you manifest energetically your dream life back then? And how do you do it like these days?
Sure. Good questions. Manifestation is a funny old thing. I think there's manifestation for me comes in two phases. So you've got manifestation where it's a form of relaxation, as in, I think manifestation works best when you're in a relaxed place, as in when there's no pressure, when there's patience. And I think that is the ultimate place to manifest. However, when I'm going back to 2015 now, and the e-com business is starting to take off, it's replacing my salary, but then it crashes and burns, and that income disappears. So I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work. Affiliate marketing was awful. And that manifestation there was it was blocked in so many different ways because the growth that I needed to go through just hadn't been had yet. So there's manifestation from a different place where your life is in somewhat a different place. So there's maybe stress, there's maybe confusion, there's a lot of overwhelm. And from that place, you're never going to be able to manifest to a place that you want to. And when you get there, it doesn't matter what the external looks like. Like I'm sat on the French Riviera right now. So you can see the mirror behind, like there's ocean there, there's ocean there, there's ocean there, and there's ocean there. Okay. Beautiful. It is the most beautiful place on earth for me right now. I'm sure I'll change my mind. However, I could be sat here in a state of confusion, overwhelm, and all these other things if I hadn't learned to let go of manifestation in the way that I have right now. Okay. And I'm still learning, by the way. But I think, how do you manifest your dream life? I think at the beginning, there is going to be things you have to mentally move through for it to actually manifest in the way that you want to, because you haven't developed to be the person yet. Again, people want to make $1 million. Great. If you wake up with $1 million tomorrow, you will spend $1 million. You will, I guarantee it, because you will save it all. It will not affect you in the same way that you think it will. Whereas as you manifest in sequence with your personal development and your personal growth, when you start to then, I call it ratcheting, you ratchet up the hill. When you're there, you get to a point where you start to realize that nothing needs to happen tomorrow or the day after or the day after. And at the beginning of your journey, you might have bills to pay. You might have courses you want to go through, and you want to manifest faster and quicker. But you've got to be careful not to manifest from the scarcity, and you've got to be careful not to manifest from a state of stress. And I think that's the biggest difference. So I think your question was, what is the difference between then and today? I think the calmness in the manifestation from experience. And I think some people are probably better and quicker at that. But I think as well, you're just going to learn to do that better over time. But I think the main thing is focusing on personal development whilst focusing on the growth and the things. Again, being in the French Riviera, amazing. But I could be sat here in a completely different mindset with the things if I just manifested without the personal growth. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes, that's very
I hope
deep,
that kind of makes
so
sense in the
good.
background.
No, that's really good. And I think I love the manifestation you said, like not manifesting from a place of scarcity, because many people, I suppose, they do this, especially if they're not in a good position. And in terms of manifestation, I know many people, they manifest money, like they want to do their first million, they want to hire their first employee, or whatever manifestations they have, and they get very like ambitious with their goals. And they say, I need to achieve this in 1 year, in the next 2 years. And when they don't achieve it, they get really frustrated. So for yourself, how do you make sure that your manifestations and goals are ambitious enough within, a certain timeline? Or don't you even have a timeline? Like, how do you go about it ambitious enough, but not making you feel frustrated?
Yeah. I think if you have, as the desire and need for money reduces, you're further along in your journey, I think you move away from timelines. At least it depends what your goal is. Like, I know people who, I was speaking to someone on a podcast the other day, his ambition is to build $1 billion company. When you have that ambition, I imagine there's more strict timelines to that conversation. That isn't my ambition. My ambition is to do what I'm doing today. So, for example, today, speaking with you is the best place that I can be. And speaking with you is the only thing I have on today. Apart from, after this, I'm going to the beach in Nice and I'm going to have a seafood lunch. Like, that's it. So with that being my ambition, the conversations are different. What I would say is when that need for money disappears, like I said, the manifestation and the timeline can become more relaxed. What I've found, though, from that place is that you still have to make the big moves. All right. Big moves are the most important thing to your personal development, but also how exciting your life is. All right. It was, for example, last year in August, we made the move to live in Europe. Okay, we brought our dog across. He traveled first class, and we did all the stuff, and it was amazing. But that was a big move for us because it meant bringing our dog from Australia to the UK. It meant a shift in business. It meant a shift in finances. All the stuff that's involved with an international move. We didn't have to make that move. We made that move because it put us in a different environment. It stretched our circle. It improved our network. And even when you're maybe in a position where, money isn't the first thing on your mind every day, you're still trying to make big life moves. So we have a 2-year plan at the moment that London was a move to facilitate that next move. So I think that's really key as well. Like, yes, we have timelines, but it's 2 years away, which gives us the position to be like, okay, we've got 2 years to make this happen. Why do we want that? Where do we want to be there? Who do we want to be? Because for the move that we're looking at, we also have to be different people. As in, we couldn't do that move and be happy in that move as the people we are today, because we would actually stick out like a sore thumb, because we wouldn't be welcome in that circle. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in an energetic way of, we are constantly trying to grow. So in answer to your question, I think is the timelines have become more relaxed, but the moves have become more fun. Like, at one point, the move was make 100K in a year. Like, that's fun, don't get me wrong, but there's like pressure. It's like, I've got to replace my salary. Then it was, okay, well, we've done 100K. How do we do 100K a month? And again, a bit of pressure. And then it's like, how do you do 1 million? A bit of pressure. As you move away from that, I think that's when it becomes more fun. And then you get to make big life moves. Like, I'm looking at behind me now, there's a super yacht, and somebody bought it for 130 million. And he's not on it right now. And I'm like, okay, how do you get to be that guy? How do you, like, I might not want the super yacht, or I might want the super yacht, but how do I get to be in his position where he's got those choices? So that's what I think manifestation shifts from earlier years to now. There's less of a timeline, but it's also a lot more fun, and there's still a timeline. There's still a competition with myself, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for giving those insights. I think it's very interesting because you hear different things from different people. Some others, they say you must achieve it, at that date. And then others say, no, just let it be. But I think like what I've learned is kind of to think long term on what you want to be known for, what makes you happy, the simple things in the presence as well. And in terms of, you also mentioned the 4 core areas that matters a lot in terms of like the health, relationships, purpose, and the finances. How do you make sure that you equally, or I don't know, just for you as a harmony, pour into those areas and make sure you have some sort of balance for yourself?
Yeah, great question. I think this is the most important question anybody should ask. And it's one in which I've had a renewed sense of importance for in the past kind of 6 to 12 months. I think, traditionally, like when Sally and myself became a joint business, it was very much based on what we called the core 4. The core 4 isn't my wording for it. It's actually one of my mentors, Aaron Whitnish, I believe created, or at least uses this in his own life. And I remember at a mastermind retreat in Byron Bay in Australia, he was talking heavily on this, and health was something that he was saying he was making a renewed sense of importance for in the background, which was interesting because as he was going into a phase of health is the fundamental. So health, relationships, purpose, and finances is very much the order in which he preferenced them. And he said, health and relationships first, because your foundations and your at home needs to be right first. Okay. And then you can deliver your purpose and your message from a massively more influential state of being when those are in order. That doesn't mean you have to be in the relationship with your dreams if you're not. It means that the relationships you have are in good places. So one of the things at that mastermind, he was like, look, if there's not a relationship, if there's a relationship right now that isn't in good places, it's like, what can you do to neutralize that? Do you need to make a phone call? Do you need to write a letter? Do you need to let somebody go? So that was really interesting. And I do believe in those two being the foundations. I know other people kind of put money first, and I get why they do that, but I found more alignment to those things first. From there, there's purpose. You can turn up powerfully. You can share your message from a state of being in a good place yourself. And then from those 3 places being in line, you're going to make better decisions, more soul decisions around what financially you want. Okay. So that might mean you make bigger plays because you're in a better position. It might mean that you skip an investment that other people are talking about because it doesn't align to you and you're connected to you and your soul. So the core 4 has been really useful. Now, in my own journey, something that as he started going into his health, I actually started moving away from taking care of myself. Okay. Like I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So when I started making more and more money and started doing big months in my life, I wanted to go down the lifestyle route. I wanted to go down the fact that I didn't have things growing up. I wanted to fill that void of experience. Now that came at a cost to my health, because I went from training very regularly, being an ex-personal trainer, being in that sort of shape, to all of a sudden, 2016, 2017, putting on a lot of weight, 35 kilos in total till last year. And that then started to upset the balance of how do I turn up? Now, not to the point of things failed, nothing failed, but something that I found massively important, as in the core four, I wasn't living in alignment to. So how could I be living in full alignment to all my potential? So I think there's so much importance to that. I think if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, looking at that now and going, well, make sure your health is in order. And I'm talking physical, I'm talking like enjoyment, I'm talking mental health as well. Because I recently shared, I stopped drinking in August last year. I started training again 3 days a week. I'm now training 2 sessions a day physically. And I'm also eating in alignment with a plan. I'm also not drinking, so 6 months without a drink. And that has drastically changed what I thought I wanted my life to look like, just by changing the health. My relationships are something that I'm very proud of. But again, I can still be better there. And if I can get those two better, I know my purpose will shift. I know it'll be in a much more powerful place where I want to serve deeper, maybe not wider, but deeper. And my finances will, a natural occurrence will be making better decisions to grow my net worth in the background.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And congrats on, going back on track with the whole health and the fitness. It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
Many people do say, the better, like the more healthier you are, the more fitness you do, somewhat it has a direct correlation in how much money you make. And I've always knew that kind of because you hear that all over the place, but then doing it is a whole different game, like in a literal sense. And I also started to walk out more in nature, like even if it's not hardcore, but that thing I did realize like you're mentally getting sharper. So it's really good. And in terms of like serving, because, when you're in a good state and healthier, you can serve better your clients as well. How would you say over the past years has the way you've been mentoring people changed? Because our first 2, 3, 4 clients is probably different than our 10th client or whatever. So what would you say was the biggest shift in the way you mentor people?
Do you mean from the beginning of my journey to where I am today now?
Yeah, like the biggest difference in things, how you go about, coaching people.
Sure. I think I've always understood principles, like my mind works that way. So I would say principally it's very similar, it's just deeper. I think where I now mentor people is there's less pressure on getting a result than I first wanted to build a reputation. I think maybe naturally people do that. I know I did. So I really wanted to build a reputation of being very successful at getting people results. What I realized is over time, like a result is what the client wants it to be. So for me, I could want a client to get to do a 6-figure month in the first month of working together, as an example. They could want to do a 10K month, and that could be the biggest, achievement in their life. It would be wrong of me to expect that of them. I can spot their potential and maybe open their eyes to it, but expectation can never be had by a mentor, I believe. I think your role is to spot the desire and to spot their potential rather than kind of pulling them along. I've heard the term used, I'm not sure who used it. I'm forgetting names, but the lighthouse, a lighthouse, I'm looking at a lighthouse right now, like a lighthouse being on the rocks and the light is shining, and it's very easy to go and jump in the water and pull people to shore. But at the same time, that isn't serving them. Okay. They can swim to the lighthouse. They're going to find the way. When you do that, you're in a place where you're not in danger. You can shine your light and let people follow you and guide them. And I think I'm not doing the analogy very, very well there. And as I said, I can't remember who said it, but they talk in a different way around that. I believe that mentorship for me has changed in the way that I am now there to guide and to shine a light and to let clients and, private clients go on their path and become a better version of themselves rather than sometimes trying to save them. I know back in 2016, I would try and save clients, and that would then take my time away. It would take my power away. And I'd also be putting too much expectation on a client who maybe just wasn't ready for the result anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's great. And it comes from a much powerful place, I suppose, to pour in, to commit. But it's also something I think you told me in the DMs, like to be more committed than the client itself to the results. And as a mentor, you just have the best intentions, but you got to kind of have the boundaries. So I think it's really powerful for people listening to that as well.
And I remember that conversation we had in DMs, Ozzin, like, you had a client drop out who you really saw the potential in. And like that happens all the time in the coaching world. The reality is most will go and chase that client, and great, that's okay. But a client isn't, and especially on a high ticket level, a client isn't going to pay you high ticket when you're chasing them. And if they do pay you, it's from a place of scarcity and not backing themselves. So if you can actually help them transform, start to see more potential and create desire instead, they'll come back or they'll come to you ready to go. And I think that's, we talk about transformational selling. Transformational selling done well is where your client base is full of soul aligned clients, not people you're trying to pull along for the journey because you took their money. Two very different things.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, I think, my experience back then, I was then in New York, and there was this lady who joined me, and I was so excited, and you received the payment already and things good to go. And then they put away, and it never happened to me. I was always used to getting paid, on spot, or the things I've learned. And then it made me feel bad, like, why is she now pulling back and things? And I got very desperate, I don't know why, but something in me. I've learned through that, the things you mentioned, there's probably not the abundance money behind that, and as well as your commitments, I can't force that. So there was a good lesson, I guess, to learn about it. And in terms of the transformational selling, I know that's a technique that you also use in your own business, but you also grew up with your mom, and you mentioned they did selling and things. So it was a process. What's the mindset that you adopt to sell more confidently, and that you would share to an audience that has a hard time to sell or feel bad selling to people?
Sure. I think if I look to my background, so my mom was definitely, anything she was buying, if somebody came up to her and was like, can I help you? It was no, it was stonewall. She was never rude, but it was, and that was just her buying pattern. Okay. So I think you've got to understand people's buying patterns. That buying pattern came from a whole host of her personal things internally. Okay. Confidence, self-worth, all these things. And it always does. So the way I look at selling, and this took me years to understand, and I understand it deeper and deeper every minute I'm in this game. Your selling is always a service, but a service isn't always comfortable. As in, it's really nice to be talking to yourself, because I would say that your first investment into yourself at a high ticket level, or at least to what we were doing those 2 years ago, it wasn't comfortable for you, I imagine. I challenged you. I wanted you to transform, and I wanted you to be in a completely different place 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years from where we were that day. And look at you now. Yeah. That's all you, by the way, genuinely all you. But if I'm only focused on serving and doing what is nice, I'm not going to help in a transformation. So this is where the transformational selling comes in. You do it from a place of complete service. However, you also have to be trusted to make decisions, ask questions, and also maybe make opportunities for somebody that aren't comfortable for them in their current reality, but you see something different. They've shown you something either through past results, traits, words. Words are a very powerful thing at the start of somebody's journey, because we can all talk a big game. We can all say that we're 25 years old and we want to be a millionaire before we're 27. Fantastic. I honor you if you're going to do that. But if then I make you an opportunity available that is aligned to being a millionaire at 27, because that is going to be a swift and quick movement. If I make you an opportunity and you back out at that first opportunity, to me, you're just talking then. You become a talker. And with you, for example, I remember the call very well. I made you an opportunity because you wanted big things, okay? If you didn't want big things, there would have been no offer on the table. But you did want big things, and you got resourceful to make those things happen. That resourcefulness has now created a space where you've been in New York, in Times Square, your picture's been there. You're dining and networking with, A-list celebrities. Like, these are all things that you wanted to do. That version of you on that day was not there. So it needed to be a shift. And I would say that transformational selling is a massive part of how you can help a client be a future client for however long they stay with you. It's a very big part of what their future will become, is how well you can turn up with service, but also be in a position where you're willing to make hard conversations happen and also hard decisions happen. That's transformational selling. And that's what works.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so beautiful. And it's true, I think when you're in service, the challenging part is so important. It's something I've also learned, because I was first too nice to people, on sales calls. And because I was too nice, and they're like, I have to think about it. Sure, take your time, and then letting them go. Whereas now it's more, the boundaries are stricter and more fast forward, straightforward. Is this really what you want? And then kind of make them think. So I think that's a good one. And I'm curious to know, in terms of selling, I think many people, they kind of chase their clients down the road in the DMs or things, or the cold calls. And I've learned through you, that we lead, that we attract those clients and through the content and things. So just for, your journey when you started, there are so many questions I still get, is it okay to still DM some of the people? Because if you're too much, not doing it at all, maybe you don't get the clients. What's your view on that in terms of still messaging to some, or would you say no, not at all?
I'm of the belief, I've never DM'd anyone. At least I don't remember. Maybe once. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm a big believer, and this has really been a precedent for how I like to do business. And this is my other mentor, Jack Murray. Okay, he's given me this guidance and helped me refine this. But I'm a big believer. Even when I was back in my self-employed personal training days, right? My big thing for going self-employed and not into a job was always time. I could work my own hours, and I could decide when I worked. And that was a really big challenge for me first getting my sales job, where I had to turn up 9 till 5 or 8 till 6. So I'm a big lover of, because I had those 3 years in sales, my life is very important to me. My time is very important to me. And you know this from working together. I really value my time, hence why today, this is the only thing going on. And apart from looking at the ocean and going for a seafood dinner, that's my day. And I've already made, a decent amount of money today. And I do every day. Now, what I would say about the DMs is, we don't want to get into a place of chasing, because if somebody needs to be chased, they want you to do more for them in the future. So I would rather live my life on my terms. So currently I'm traveling a little bit, but even when I'm in London and it's grey and miserable, I'm living on my terms. you want your life and your moves to be the attraction point. So I may have mentioned, I'm not sure, but I did a video this morning on my stories actually, and I said, people want to know how to sell high ticket. And I'm talking, at the 10K level, let's say, but I'm also talking at the 50K level and the 100K plus level per client. How do you sell that? Well, you make more moves in your life. You become more valuable. As your business grows to 100K, $1 million, $1 million plus, decamillionaire level, investments, net worth, all these things, that doesn't happen by chance. That is very deliberate. It's a deliberate life plan, a deliberate strategy, and it's a deliberate outcome that is aligned to you as a person. So when you show your moves, those people that maybe are inspired or aspiring to work with you will naturally get in touch when the time is right. I've had a recent client, we worked together in December, and it was really, really nice. She started following Sally and myself in 2020 at the start of COVID. And she's always messaged and been really pleasant. And she started working with us in December. And why? Because her life aligned, her life changed. And eventually she was like, I'm done with this old way of doing things. I'm going to go and work with Sally and mine. Okay. If I'd have chased her and DM'd her, because she's messaged maybe 10 times over the last few years, never anything about business, just life. If I'd have DM'd her, I would have been entering her life at the wrong point of where I could be the highest value. So it would be wrong of me to push that. And we go back to manifestation. My manifestation is working with clients not for a week. I want to work with a client for 10 years and longer. Okay. I haven't done that yet, but I've got many multi-year clients, 3, 4, 5 years around that length of time. I want to be there for the big plays. I like helping for yourself. I helped you along getting your first high ticket client. That was amazing. But I do have, my manifestation is to work with people for 10 years on the big stuff. So if I'm coming in at the wrong time, DMing and going, well, this is where I want a client, like that's just purely on me. Whereas if a client comes to me, the whole energies of the world have aligned. And I'm okay with that. I much prefer that personally. And the call is easier, and the payment is easier, and the relationship is easier. The outcomes are easier. All of it's good.
Wow, that's so good. Yeah, it's a whole different level to be in, because when I work with you and then I also work with other coaches and mentors, of course the experience is different, the way they go about things is different. And this is where I got totally confused. But Martin said back then to me, don't chase people. And this guy is telling me, cold DM those people in that way, or do organic marketing. And I think many coaches or people are confused what's the right way, and then they look for the next thing, which is also true, and they jump over. But I think ultimately, what's the way you want to run your business is, I think, very important. And do it in a way that is more fun and is also good for you. So
and they're all valid as well. It's in every way of running your business is valid. It really is. I don't sit here and say my way is good, because it has its rewards, and it also doesn't work for some people, as in they just couldn't do what I do, and they couldn't do what you do. They couldn't do what anyone else does. I know people who they get a kick from the conversation of a DM. That's their joy, is the chase. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who likes to, give value, work with my clients. And also I want to build my life to a point where somebody, in the right place at the right time, a day from now or 10 years from now, comes and works with me on their terms. And when they do, they're 100% ready to get the results they're ready for, but they're also 100% ready to surrender to my process. Because again, you've seen this, is we get to work and we make big moves. So I think that's really key as well.
Nice, wonderful. And in terms of like building all that up, like building wealth is something that many people want. And you mentioned the keyword purposeful wealth. And what does purposeful wealth for you personally mean? And what's one of the biggest lessons you had throughout your journey when it comes to purposeful wealth?
Yeah, great question. Purposeful wealth, I think, is, maybe this isn't from a wealth perspective, but it can certainly fit in there. I've done the work in the background where I didn't enjoy what I was doing. Okay, like I've done it. I've paid my dues, so to speak. There's nothing better than receiving financial returns for things that I think is good for the world. The reason I do what I do is because I certainly wasn't poor growing up, but I also, traditionally a working class family, and a certain area that you can say is good or bad, I don't know. But again, I didn't grow up with a lot. I grew up with enough, and that never felt good to me. So I now want to create the lifestyle of my dreams, and I'm certainly enjoying life, but I think you can be way more purposeful behind that. And if you are tapping into what lights you up, like, there's nothing I would rather do than mentor somebody. Like, as I said, like, there's nothing I would rather be doing right this second than talking to you about how to help somebody grow. Nothing in the world, genuinely. And the fact that I get to do that every single day and make good money from it, it proves to me that there's a God, there's a universe, there's something, because it's all working out for me. So I do genuinely feel that. I think that's purposeful wealth, because when you're enjoying what you do, you're being lit up, you're doing podcasts like this, you're just living day to day. And is it perfect? Definitely not. There's challenges with everything. But if you're doing that, there's other ways to make money as well outside of your business. Especially in current markets and the climate at the minute, there's a lot of maybe quick money to be made. It would be very easy to fall into traps right now. And I think people who aren't making purposeful money or purposeful ways of bringing in the money, I think they're more aligned to maybe making decisions in the markets and growing bigger wealth. I think they're more aligned to making mistakes and maybe quick wins and quick drops as well. I think that's definitely a thing. Whereas I think if you're aligned to what you do, and I think if you're aligned to like your daily life, you don't sit around and have FOMO, because you're already so content that when an opportunity does come along, you might analyze that. But I think you're way more likely to do something in alignment with what's going to fit your life. So again, get your life in order, like do something you love. And I think that there's better decisions to be made down the road. I think that's what purposeful wealth is to me, if I was to describe it.
Okay, wow, that's wonderful. And I think it's good in terms of our health as well, because when we do something we love, we tend to be more healthier and have better relationships. So it contributes a lot into these areas as well. And as we go and, as coaches, consultants, or as an entrepreneur, our beliefs around things also sometimes change. What we used to believe in is maybe evolved. And what would you say is the most recent belief shift that you've had in your business or in your life?
Belief shift is without a doubt health. That one's going to have the biggest knock-on effects that I've ever had. It already has. And I'm not talking about it a lot at the minute. Like, I put it on my stories, but in the next 2 years, that's going to have the biggest effect on anything I've ever done, without a doubt. And it's really nice to be aligning towards that again. I'm early in a journey into a new me, but I will be talking about that. That will be something that I'll be definitely putting forward as time goes on, because I don't think I definitely didn't realize what effect what was having on me And I know people in the same situation who are maybe even in a worse situation in their life. And I know I can help people with that because the mindset behind it, I knew things were going on, but I was hiding and not telling the truth. So I know that that's what people need to do, is they need to tell the truth to themselves. It's like all business, by the way. We always need to tell the truth. But I think that's been the biggest shift for me, without a doubt, and one that I'm really grateful that I made.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of these very valuable insights, Martin. So the last questions I have to wrap this whole podcast, because I know we can go on for further on so many different topics,
for hours and hours.
Is like, is there a specific quote or motto that you live by that inspires you daily?
A specific quote? Probably not, to be honest. I think I'm going to make my own one, but it's all about living your version of your best life. As cheesy as that sounds, it's like, if you're not doing that today, as in, quite clearly that things are off, you're not happy, and you're avoiding some big moves, let's say, I think the main thing to do is make one big move right this moment and start to step into the life you actually want. I think that's probably the main thing. And I would say that when I'm not doing that is when I feel most out of alignment and I need to change things. So yeah, that's where I would say a motto, if anything. I just made it up, but it will do quite nicely, I think.
That's wonderful. There's actually something I just want to add, because sometimes when people say, what's the essence of life? What's the thing that matters to you in life? I come with words like, it's true love. It's be the best version, as you mentioned. And then it feels very corny. And I recently just said to something, if you feel it's corny, it's probably the things that matters the most. And it's the most profound things, And in terms of all the aspiring entrepreneurs, coaches who are listening to this episode, what would you lastly say to them if they were to start their journey with all the knowledge you have?
There's two things here. I think people will disagree with this, and I wouldn't say it's controversial, but I do believe if you're going to go into entrepreneurship, this is what I did. Like, you have to make a decision. Let's say you're ready today. You make a decision and you never back out of that decision. I mean, if it's your decision today to leave your job and that's what you need, you need to do that. It feels absolutely crap, but you need to do that. You need to commit to that decision and never, ever look back, because the minute you look back is where you start to give up on growth. And I've seen it many times. I've seen people go, oh, well, I'll get the part-time job back, or I'll do this because I need to. And in that moment, they don't get better on the sales calls. In that moment, they don't put their brand together. In that moment, they stop speaking their message because they now have a safety blanket. I don't like that. That wasn't how I did it. So I would say that's a really key part to this. I would also say, don't be afraid of investing into yourself in a big way, okay? Because again, that is what I've done. And it's also what you did. You started your journey investing into high ticket. I would say, do you need to invest into high ticket? That's completely up to you. But I would invest into mentorship and guidance from day one, whatever you can do. And I would say, if opportunities come to you, say yes to them and start to figure them out, okay? Because you're going to grow into the person that you need to become, even to take up that opportunity. And I think people say no, and then that leaves all the growth on the table. If somebody makes you an offer that feels out of sync, try and make it work. Try and create the opportunities. You always can. I've got a client at the moment who I made an offer. It was a premium private client offer, and she had to go and grow into that. But again, has made more money than ever before just to get into the program. And the growth is exceptional. And that's what we're looking for. I don't make offers to just anybody, you know that, but I look for the potential. And if I would say, again, people out there, don't go back on your word or your commitment. And then from there, find a way to grow into it, because you're more than capable of it. You have the potential. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been put in front of you.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for those insights. I think that, the whole
Okay.
thing with the decision is so important to, to take a clear-cut decision and go all in, full commitment. I think it's also one of the things you mentioned earlier on, and myself, I can testify that. It's like when you're half in, you're either not getting at all the results or you're getting halfway results. Whether you're fully in, it's it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's not scary because you're fully in. So
Yes.
It's amazing. And how can people get in touch with you and work with you?
The best way right now is probably Instagram. So my full name in the handle, Martin, Martyn, Tomczuk, TOMCZ UK. We do have some opportunities that we're actively promoting right now. So we have the Digital Millionaires, which is a live workshop going ahead at the moment, which I'm very excited about, setting up a digital lifestyle and also creating wealth from that. So that's probably the best way to get in touch, through Instagram at the moment. You can also do that through Facebook as well. I am available on Facebook. I just don't use it as much.
All right, perfect. Well, I will take all your socials, Instagram below. So give Martin a follow, hit him up if you have any questions around business and things when you want to scale or build your own coaching consulting business. And thank you so much, Martin, for your precious time, for all those insights as well. I wish you an amazing day, good dinner. Say hi to Sally, and I hope next time for another conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the questions you asked. A lot of thought has gone into those, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share as well.